Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to sift through complex information and pull out the really interesting bits for you.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're diving into a really fascinating historical text, William Boericke's Materia Medica.
Ah, yes, a cornerstone reference.
For anyone not familiar, think of it like a detailed catalog from the past, listing remedies and exactly how they seem to affect people. It's based purely on observation, really.
A kind of qualitative database before we had all the modern tools.
Exactly. And our focus today is one specific entry, Azadirachta Indica. You probably know it as margosa bark or neem.
That's the one.
Our mission here is to unpack the incredibly precise, sometimes even surprising, effects noted for this plant back then. We want to understand why capturing these tiny details was so important.
It's all about the patterns they were seeing.
Okay, let's get into it then. What sort of fascinating observations did they actually record about margosa bark?
Well, it's truly remarkable just how specific these old records get. It's like they were, mapping the body's entire reaction. The source highlights margosa bark being linked particularly to an afternoon fever and rheumatic type pains.
Okay, afternoon fever, rheumatic pains. Sounds fairly standard.
But the key thing is, these aren't just vague feelings. Boericke describes a very specific set of effect, almost like a unique signature for the remedy.
So not just, I feel achy or I have a fever. What kind of specifics are we talking about with these pains? How did they pin down where it hurt?
Precisely. The observations detail pain in really specific spots, like the sternum, between the ribs, the back, the shoulders too.
Sternum and ribs, okay.
And it goes further into the limbs. Descriptions of heat, a sort of distinct pricking feeling and aching specifically in the hands. Yeah, palms and fingers especially, and the toes as well. It paints this really localized picture of where the discomfort is.
Wow, that level of detail, palms, fingers, sternum, it really shows how closely they were watching.
Oh.
Why was getting that exact location so critical back then? What did it help them do?
Well, it was basically their main diagnostic tool, right? They didn't have lab tests or x-rays.
Right, of course.
So a really precise picture of the symptoms was their guide. They believed the more unique and specific a symptom was, the clearer it pointed towards a particular remedy.
So it helped tell Azadirachta, apart from, say, something else that might cause general aches.
Exactly. They were building this database based on observation, looking for patterns consistent enough to be like a fingerprint for that substance.
That makes sense. Did this kind of precision carry over into effects on the mind or head symptoms?
Oh, absolutely. The source notes several things related to the head.
Like what?
Things like forgetfulness, a feeling of giddiness, especially when standing up quickly, general headaches too, and even a sensitive scalp.
Sensitive scalp, interesting.
But what really stands out for its incredible specificity is the mention of burning eyes, and even more focused, a pain located specifically in the right eyeball.
The right eyeball. Just the right one.
Just the right one, according to the text.
That seems almost hyper-specific. What does a detail like that tell us about how they observed or how they differentiated remedies?
It really speaks to the empirical nature of their approach. They weren't just noting if a symptom was there, but its exact quality, location, accompanying feelings.
Mm-hmm.
A pain specifically in the right eyeball might have been seen repeatedly in cases where margosa bark seemed to work, making it a potentially very reliable sign for them. It's all about finding those unique, almost peculiar details.
Like creating that symptom fingerprint you mentioned down to the side of the body.
Okay.
Incredible focus. Okay, what about the fever? Was that just a simple temperature rise or did it have nuances too, like the pains?
Oh, the fever description is quite detailed as well, following a very particular pattern.
How so?
It often begins with a slight chill. Then that gives way to the fever, specifically in the afternoon.
Okay, afternoon onset.
But it's not just the heat itself. There's a description of a distinct glowing heat felt specifically in the face, hands, and feet.
Glowing heat. Localized like that.
Yes, and then that localized heat is followed by a lot of sweating, but particularly on the upper part of the body.
Face, hands, feet get hot, then sweat, mainly up top. That's a very specific sequence.
It is. It's not just a fever. It's this kind of fever at this time with these sensations and this sweat pattern. It really hammers home that focus on tiny details.
So for a practitioner back then, knowing these exact fever characteristics must have been incredibly helpful.
Absolutely, diagnostically invaluable. Instead of trying to treat a generic fever, they could match this very specific pattern, the afternoon timing, the glowing heat in the extremities, the upper body sweat, to the known profile of margosa bark.
It allowed for more targeted targeted choices based on matching the patient's unique symptoms to the remedy's picture.
Exactly. Finding that resonance between the illness presentation and the substance's observed effects.
And the text also mentions relationships to other remedies. I see cedron, natrum myrrh, arsenic listed. What's the significance of that in a materia medica?
Ah, yes, the relationships. That serves a few key functions in these kinds of texts. Sometimes it's about telling remedies apart differential diagnosis. If symptoms seem similar between margosa and, say, arsenic, this comparison would guide the practitioner towards the best fit based on subtle differences.
Right, distinguishing features.
Other times it might point to remedies that work well with margosa bark, synergistic effects, or even ones that could counteract its effects, like an antidote.
So it places margosa bark within a whole network of other substances.
Precisely. It's not in isolation. It's part of the larger therapeutic map they were using at the time, like a cross-referencing system to help navigate complex symptom pictures.
So we've mapped out these incredibly specific details for Azadirachta indica, from those localized pains, the very particular way the fever progresses, right down to that unique pain in the right eyeball. It really drives home how comprehensive these historical observations aim to be.
It really does. What's genuinely fascinating here is that remarkable level of detail in these historical notes, things like the glowing heat in the face, hands, and feet, or, as you said, the pain pinpointed to the right eyeball. It just shows the intricate patterns they were actively looking for.
Observing not just what happened, but the how and the where.
Exactly, building this rich, detailed picture of the body's potential responses.
So as you reflect on these highly specific symptoms and sensations linked to margosa bark, maybe consider this. What does this intense level of precise observation tell us about the human body's own capacity for unique individual responses? And, perhaps more broadly, how can such detailed historical records, built purely from careful watching, contribute to our ongoing understanding of wellness and the history of how we've thought about health?